Hey everybody, it's Mr. Wimbley. Hope you're all doing good. Now, we're going to get started with a new unit in your book, and it's one of my favorite units out of all of them because it's talking about the Bible. It's Unit 2, Section 1, and it's on page 56, I believe. And we're actually going to start on page 58, and we're going to be discussing about the Bible, and not just the Bible, but we're going to be talking about how it's true, how we know that it's without error. Now, I've given you a lot of different council time messages through the years, and you've heard lots of them, and a lot of the times we use a slide or we talk about how we know that the Bible is our standard. Now, we have this for us right here, and it's just a short little reminder for us of what is our standard and where should we go for answers. And we should go to God's holy word. Now, your verse this week is going to be talking about the Bible. It's Psalms 119, verse 160, and it says, "The sum of your word is truth, and every one of your righteous rules endures forever." Now, that's a fairly bold statement, isn't it? The Bible is true. It always has been, and it's going to last forever. So incredibly bold. I know what I say isn't always true, let alone is it going to be true for a millennia or even more. Now, here's the really great part. We as believers, we actually have more than just faith in this Bible. We have a lot of factors to prove that the Bible is backed up by evidence found not in the Bible, which is great for the people who say, I don't really know if I believe the Bible or not. The Bible is a true event, and it describes other true events. It's not just really Bible stories or Bible fairy tales, because people might think it's made up, but it's actually history. What the Bible talks about has actually occurred. Now, I have this book. If you were like me growing up as a little kid, you would have seen books like this all the time. Let me pull it up for us. Here we go. They're called eyewitness books. And this was one of my favorite growing up. It's about the Titanic. And in it, you get to see what the Titanic looked like, but you also get to hear about people and their lives before, after, and during the Titanic, and even when they found it. Now, we know these people are real because we have these artifacts that have shown that, yes, there actually was this ship that sank. We found it. And the Bible is actually very similar to that. We have stuff that shows that, hey, it's true because we found stuff that has actually existed in the Bible. So just like we can go and see this Titanic and say, oh, yep, that was a real event, we can go over to Israel, over to Judea, over to Jerusalem and see all the archaeological evidence that shows, hey, this was a real place. Now, here's one that we hear about often. It's Bethlehem, where Jesus was born. Now, just from these ruins, we can actually learn a lot about it. Now, critics might try to claim that the Bible, it never existed, and then it's kind of funny because we'll find things in the Bible that shows that it truly did. I used to hear that there's this thing called King David. I'm sure you've heard of him. And they'd say, you know, this King David, he didn't exist. But what's kind of funny is in 33, we found something called the Dan Stele. And what's special about this is, I forgot the name where it was found, the city of the name where it was found, but it talked about the king of Israel and the king of the house of David. And they actually found the city of David. Whoops, I guess it existed. Here's an archaeological piece that shows that King David existed. Now, we also have this kingdom in Isaiah chapter 20, verse 1, that talks about Sargon, the king of Assyria. And people said, that king didn't exist, and it was made up. But in 1843, I believe it was, they found the ruins to his city in Iraq or Iran. I can't remember which one. But there was this palace, and it was for Sargon, the king of Assyria. His name was etched all over. Now, what's really sad is it's kind of been destroyed because of the stuff going on in the Middle East. But it shows that this king that was mentioned has actually existed. So it's just further proving that, guess what? The Bible's true. Now, we have this thing called the Cylinder of Nabondius. I'm sure I said that wrong. It was found in the late 1800s. And what people tried to do is they tried to claim in the book of Daniel that he made up the name of a king, King Balthazar. And they said, well, this guy never existed. But guess what? When they found this cylinder from another kingdom, it was actually talking about him. And so, oh, I guess Daniel didn't make up this king or make up this name. This king actually existed as well. Now, many years ago, they found another piece of evidence from the Bible. So one of the priests that was saying Jesus is going to be crucified, they found his bones. Now, I have to pull his name up because I wrote it down sloppily. It was the high priest Caiaphas. They tried to claim that there's no proof for him. But in about 1990, they found what's called an ossuary for him. And this is what an ossuary is, for those who don't know. It's a box where they keep human remains. So it's kind of like an urn. And this ossuary had Caiaphas' name on it, the high priest. And you can see it's kind of nice, so we know it was the same high priest they're talking about. Then we have this. It's called the dedication stone in Caesarea. And what's nice about it is people try to claim that Pontius Pilate, who oversaw the trial of Jesus, they try to say that he never existed. And guess what? When they were tearing down this theater in Caesarea, they found this dedication stone that was thanking Pontius Pilate for basically having the perfect example of Roman territory. So, I guess that means he existed, doesn't it? Now, we can go on and on and on. There's thousands and thousands of archaeological evidence that shows what happened in the Bible is true. Now, if you want more information, let me know, because I can have my father-in-law come. He's a pastor, and this is like his cup of tea. This is what he loves to talk about. Now, what's also amazing about this is more evidence. When people say, I don't believe the Bible, we can show them this. Another thing about this is the Bible is very consistent. Remember, it was written by many people. It was written by about 40 people over such a long time period, over thousands of years, between 1500 and 2000 years. Now, if you think about it, that's a very long time. One of the games I play in school all the time is telephone. And so that's where you whisper into someone's ear and then they whisper the same thing. And just in my class of 20 students, the message gets completely distorted. But the message in the Bible has always been the same. What people wrote for a prophecy 400 years ago would come true 400 years after it was declared. So that is another spectacular thing that shows that the Bible has stayed true through all the ages, through all this time. Now, what we're going to focus on is how we know that Bible's true. One of the things also, before we end for tonight, is we have these things called the Dead Sea Scrolls. And what's nice about that is the Dead Sea Scrolls compared what we have to scriptures that were actually written thousands of years ago. And we got to look at these Dead Sea Scrolls from such a long time ago and compare it to what we have now, and they were virtually the same, which is amazing. I know when I give my students something to just copy down in class, it changes dramatically. Even though they're copying something from straight up on the board, it magically changes. Words, letters are misspelled, but these Dead Sea Scrolls were the exact same. Now, why is it the same? Well, it's because God had to have that consistent message for us to let us know, this is how you get to heaven. This is how much I love you. This is why I sent my son for you. He doesn't want that message to change, so he's made sure we have evidence for it, and he's made sure those people that wrote it had that same message as well. Now, our last thing before we go, I know I keep saying the last thing, but this is truly the last thing. One of the things the Bible also tells us is that there are eyewitness accounts. If you've ever watched on TV, you'll notice they call people to the stands and they testify and say, this is what happened in the trial. Well, the Bible also tells us that this is also what happened. In Luke, we have an account of people saying they saw Jesus rise from the dead. In 1 Corinthians 15 verses 3-8, it says over 500 people saw Jesus after he was crucified. So this is just another example of those eyewitness accounts backing up those archaeological evidence. All right, guys, I hope you get your sections done, sent off to your leaders. And if not, then make sure that you at least check in with them and say, hey, I'm doing okay. I'll talk to you guys later.